Loud. And here we go. So, hello everyone. This is Ali Azzuddin for Generation for Education. Our special day, different perspectives on agency. And this is session 6. I'm so happy to have Mark with me. Hello everyone. I can see some faces. They've been here since the morning, Mark. People from
Wow.
Lebanon, people from Jordan. And just a quick reminder in that chat, please choose to all panelists and attendees, because if you choose to all panelists and attendees, when you are writing for us, you are going to share all your reflections with everyone. I'm checking also Facebook Live, and I'm going to say hello to everyone watching from Facebook. I can say hello to Sandeep from India. So as you know, Mark, these webinars, they are very international. Isha is watching from Saudi Arabia. We have people here from the UAE, South Africa. It's 4:30 p.m. Dubai time. And as you can see, Mark is an artist, so he's not using our template, but we still have our colors, the orange and the yellow. It starts with you, supporting student voice and choice with Mark Ryan. Mark, let's go and let us know a little bit more about what did you prepare for today.
All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much. I would like to give everyone a big uh, tap on the back for being here on your weekend and already near the end of the academic term. So congratulations for continuing to push your professional development even near the end. And I hope that we can work together during this little session so that we can both get something out of it. Because of course, if we're talking about student voice and student choice, we need to be hearing the voices that are in this room and demonstrating and modeling that behavior, or it would seem a little bit strange to me. So I definitely want to hear your voice and your perspectives during it. My talk is about, it starts with you, the idea that your personal journey as an educator or just as a person is very important that you're bringing into the classroom when trying to develop student voice and choice with your students. If if there was something unique that I would think that you'd be taking from today, would be that approach of the storytelling aspect and sharing who you are. It's not something that I see common in every classroom. I know teachers are very strong with skills, they're very strong with their subject matter, with their pedagogy, but they're not always willing or interested with sharing their life with their students or see the relevance or the importance. So I hope that my angle and interpretation on the importance of that can help you as educators and help your students to become more confident and more willing to share and make choices during your classes. So you can see that kind of foggy spotlight. And I think of that as what the students are looking at the front of the class. They see the spotlight, they see the importance, but they don't maybe know who that person is, who's going to step out in front of that spotlight and share themselves with them. And so today I would hope that we could do that. To begin, I'm going to show you the planning for a lesson. My lessons always go in these 5 steps. Beginning, we are learning to, you know, the WALT, or you can use any kind of expression you want. And this will start to make sense near the end because I'll kind of unpack this during our chat today. So you're starting with we are learning to, whatever it is that your objective is or your skill is or whatever that happens to be. And then the next part is a story connected to that. One of the points of your planning of your, you know, your scope and sequence or your outcomes that you're trying to unpack in those lessons, you connect that with a story at the beginning of the lessons and allow the students to see how this is connected with you. And I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So it's often connected to learner profile or related concepts, ATLs. The next is a skill. I'm an art teacher, so I am teaching skills, of course. I want students to be capable with a variety of different skills in the art room, whether that's fine motor skills, whether that's some kind of artistic skills or painting or charcoal, handling materials, but skills are definitely important. Then I go into differentiation, and we all know that's important when it comes to student choice for their readiness or their ability. And then at the end, a reflection piece, and hearing the voice of the students is always really important. So I always make sure to end with a reflection in case I've missed any of those opportunities during the lesson. So I'm going to try to model this as we go through, and then I'll also be asking some questions in the chat so that I can get your perspectives. So let's move on. They need to know, and they need to know you. And I break it up into 3 categories. One, they need to know about the younger version of yourself, the times in your life where you are in their shoes. You're the student in the classroom, you're connecting with some of the learning, the outcomes, the skills that they're doing. So I like to think of that as, you know, some of those things that happened when you were a youth all the way to when you were present. Maybe then they can look at you as not just that educator who's wise and, you know, all knowing through the years, but they can see you as someone who's struggled or someone who they can maybe relate with. And that often is difficult for students to do, to see you as a student. The next part is university life, when you were developing who you were, making choices, maybe branching out and finding your passions, taking all of that knowledge from when you were at school and then becoming the person that maybe is more career-based or linking to that. So the career, and then the last one is present day, sharing things that are going on in your life at that moment, why you're using those materials. Maybe you saw something on social media, maybe you saw something that you saw at a workshop and you were doing. You know, if I go back to school, well, I will go tomorrow, I will share the fact that I did this seminar, that I reached out and that I shared with colleagues and educators around the world, because I want students to do that. I want them to follow and say, oh, Mr. Mark, how did you do that? What did you do that with? What tools did you use? And so you model how students can reach out and connect with people. So before we start, I will give you a little bit of my personal narrative so that you know who I am, and I will ask you a question as well. You can see me there in that photo with some nice white sneakers on, and I'll get to that part of the story, but I am a Canadian educator. I am from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And if you could put your country flag in the chat, I would love to see where you are from, or write where you are from. So if you could do that, I would be putting the red and white and the maple leaf up there for you, but where everybody is from. And so in 2006, I graduated from Teachers College and I took a risk. And I say this very intentionally right now. I took a risk. And I say that to the students. If there was something from the learner profile that I would want to connect with, telling my story of leaving Canada, leaving my friends, leaving my family, leaving my security, and moving abroad to teach internationally in Hong Kong, a place where I had no connections, didn't speak the language, and really didn't understand anything with the culture, I was taking a risk. And this is opening up one of the areas that I would like to discuss with them in the lesson, is that we are going to be risk takers. Now, I wouldn't spell that out completely, but I would mention it. And then I would hope that they might catch on as it goes on. Hey, Mr. Mark, maybe there's some connection with you being a risk taker in that story to what we're going to have to do in our lesson today, and allow them to find connections to speak with me and to share their voice. So I left Canada in 2006, moved to Hong Kong, was an early childhood educator and also an early primary teacher. I did that for a few years. And then I had the opportunity of putting myself out there in the community, making community connections, another very specific thing that I talk to my students about. And just like today, I'm at the Louvre, Abu Dhabi in the basement. I'm part of doing a student voice workshop here with my students. And making connections in the community is so important. And it's so important for students to know that you do that as well. So I was painting a mural in an area in Hong Kong called Lang Kwai Fong, which is a restaurant district. And someone had seen my name on the mural and connected it to something that I had done before, where they had made a connection with me. And we sat down and created the idea of a kids' television show. And that led me into another idea of risk taking and maybe being open-minded, in the sense of, would you be willing to leave everything you are doing now in education and go and be on television and create a program? And I didn't have a theatrical background. I didn't write television scripts. I didn't know anything about it. But I said yes. And Ali knows all about saying yes. He says yes to his passions and pushes people to go with their passions and say yes. So I know he can relate to saying yes and seizing the day. But I took a big risk there, and I started a kids television show. I did that for 5 years in Hong Kong, reaching about 1 million viewers a day in Hong Kong and mainland China. So it was quite a powerful opportunity for me, and it was a really amazing experience. And it led me into teamwork. I had to work with a variety of people to be successful during this opportunity, and I haven't stopped to do that since. The idea of linking with people, collaborating so that you're stronger as a team than just as an individual. Now, I say all of those things, not so much to let people know, wow, I was on television or I did this and that and the other thing, but that I had some moments where I had to make choices based on things that maybe we'll be learning in the classroom, and definitely things that we'll be learning today. So talking about teamwork and community, if everyone could tell me their passion in the chat, I would love to know that. I would like us to come together as a team and share our voices. So I'm using the idea of building community within our group right now. What is one of your passions? And it could be painting, it could be reading, it could be going for a walk. And maybe Ali could shout out a couple examples that he sees. I just have my screen set here on this lovely picture.
Sure. So I'm going to start by telling you that we have people from Philippines, Lebanon, Kenya, South Africa, UAE, Jordan, India, New Zealand, Arab Canadian based in Jordan. So you have every people from everywhere. And then now, if you want to start with their passion, we have running boot camps, drawing and painting. Working with students and traveling. Unfortunately, Hiba, like we're not able to travel a lot these days. Writing blogs, and then what else? We have cooking, listening to music, and plenty of passion. And I'm enjoying the start of the webinar, Mark, how you are building this community and modeling these best practices. We've been since the morning saying that you need to know your students, you need to know who is listening to you in order to support them. So let's continue.
I totally agree. You definitely need to know your students and your learners, and they definitely need to know you. And I would say right now, it's the idea of creating opportunities for students to inquire through a greater understanding of you and finding those moments where they see something in my art practice. And I'm speaking as an art educator, but you could relate this to whatever you're teaching. Something in the practice links back to something I remember my teacher saying. I remember they were speaking about being a risk taker and moving, and maybe how they struggled or how they overcame that. Maybe there's something that I can relate in my work if they're doing some work that had to do with traveling or their home country or doing research about who they are. And I link that a lot with my students at the international school. And I should also say right now I am in Abu Dhabi, and I'm, as I said, at the Louvre Abu Dhabi this afternoon. And I'm teaching at Raha International School, part of a Talim group of schools. Now, thanks for dropping in the chat your passions. And I wrote a question there. What can you share with your students to create that entry point? And I'm thinking, you're starting a lesson and you're talking about, you want them to be communicators or you want them to be researchers. What could you share with them to start that entry point? And what you just said in those chats that Ali was reading off are exactly the points: the blogging, the idea of being a traveler, or the struggles that you can't travel, and where that kind of places you in the classroom. But I think the important thing is, how does that narrative, how does that story link with what it is we are learning today? So, you don't want to just tell random stories that just kind of shout them out. I think there are moments for that where you can share just things that are exciting in your life, and they can be, oh, that's really fun that he shared that story. He's obviously very passionate about it. However, it's best if you can think, all right, today I'm going to be looking at this specific related concept or this specific learner profile. What can I share that I know in my life that they'll find kind of interesting, and it will be authentic, but it also kind of lead into what I'm hoping they will talk about in the lesson. So I'm going to go into the idea of mixing that with the idea of skills, because oftentimes as educators, we'll walk into the lesson and you'll see, if you can remember back to, I'm going to jump back just for a second here to our planning area. So we are learning today, we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, but I want the students to be risk takers, and I'm going to tell them a story about being a risk taker. I'm going to tell them about leaving Canada. And if I asked you right now about me, and if there's anything you knew about me being a risk taker, I'm sure someone could write something down in the chat, because I've given you that window into a little bit of who I am. But the next one is skills. And I bring that up because there is this struggle, I feel, between the teachers who are skill-based and those who push away from the importance of skills. Maybe they like to allow students to be a little bit more creative, a little bit, maybe even not more creative, but a little bit more free, open-minded when they come into the art room. However, I feel skills are essential at the beginning for creating student voice and opportunity. It's the stepping stone into the lesson to provide clarity for what it is that they're supposed to be doing. So, in the art room, we always talk about tackling the blank canvas and that being overwhelming and that being a struggle. And it's the same for a lot of different disciplines. However, if you can take that first moment to touch on a skill, the moment where they can know, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be trying to get at. And in that moment, of course, I think there's 3 things that we need to do twice. So I guess 6. So if I was a mathematician, I would be getting an A+ right now with my addition skills. But the idea of creating 3 entry points for your skill, and that would be choice. And I was wondering if in the chat right now, if there was an educator, a visual artist, or maybe someone in math, someone in literacy, if they can think of three choices that they often give to skills. And I can model one for you. For example, when I'm doing still life drawing, 3 entry points into the skill would be to, number 1, we are going to be drawing a mannequin. We are going to be using charcoal. And the skill that I want you to be looking at is the observation. We're going to be looking at observation skills, but actually the skill of handling a charcoal. And what I would ask them to is give them 3 choices to how they wanted to handle that material. Number 1, just exploring the material, exploring the charcoal, trying to figure out how the charcoal works, working on the edges, on the sides, pushing it harder, softer. The next, using the charcoal to look at value, for example, handling it so that they can actually create dark to light areas. And then maybe also handling the charcoal to actually create a shape and create a form. And so allowing the students all to be learning the skill of handling charcoal and sharing their ideas, but giving them different ways to enter into that practice so that they can have choice in that opportunity. And I think that's extremely important, instead of everyone sitting down and just trying to draw a specific thing, a mannequin, for example. And so if Ali could look into the chat, maybe there's someone that jumped on that, something came to their mind right away of, a skill where they're very quick, or, you have it on the top of your head that you provide quick choice.
I'm going to pick some ideas from the previous chat because some people share this whole idea of making a difference, and that's what makes them unique. And then reading and researching while we are waiting for the skills and what they would like to focus on. So, and having also a look on Facebook participants, I can see some interaction is happening there, and some people are also watching us. So,
well, I'll move on.
Yeah. So we have one. So it started coming, Ryan, Mark. Watching a video, writing notes, catching the essence. These are skills that they would like to highlight or to share or to teach. Yes, Mark.
Awesome. And I think it's that idea of, and I think it does take some time to come up with those different entry points for how students can enter a skill at different parts, determined probably by their readiness, but the students allowing to make those choices. And we'll go into the importance in the next part about that. And it's also, as a visual artist, and I would love to hear how this works in other disciplines, but the idea of 3 entry points with materials. Whenever I'm bringing materials into the classroom, I find that is a beautiful way to see student agency and student choice and voice, is when they don't get restricted to charcoal, for example, as I said at the beginning. So you're exploring how to, different ways to handle the charcoal if that's the skill that you're trying to teach them. However, they can then move on and try that with something else, maybe an oil pastel, maybe a soft pastel. Maybe they would just grab a paintbrush and see how that relates to the charcoal and have a discussion about, because there will be certain sensory leaning. Students tend to lean based on their sensory connection to things. Some push away from those highly oil materials, charcoal, anything that seems messy. Some students dive into those opportunities and some step back pretty quickly, depending on how much exposure they've had. But, allowing them to gradually get into those things can really allow them to blossom as learners in the classroom. And so giving them different material choices to get in. And I think that can, in literacy, giving them different types of text to read or different ways to form their writing, or when we look at math, giving them different ways to solve a problem. So my question at the bottom here is, what skills do you teach that are simply to start, that are simply a starting block for inquiry? And what I mean is, at the beginning here, before we dive into creating an art lesson where students are creating a work of art with charcoal and about something personal, maybe about, your central idea, something greater than just a skill of learning how to draw with charcoal, you teach them the skill that then allows them, okay, I know how to handle this material. Now, what can I do with it? Right? And that's when students can start asking questions and start observing what other people are doing and start responding in that way and start taking themselves in a different direction. So in the chat,
many people mentioned in the chat skills like sketchnoting, listening, representing, thinking. So the ATL as are appearing, asking question, observation, investigation. These are some of the ones that they have been put in the chat.
And I think the sketchnoting is a great idea. And it's kind of the idea, if you were to take sketchnoting and say, okay, we're going to be doing this process in the class. This is kind of a skill I'm going to teach you. What are 3 ways that you can allow them to enter into sketchnoting? Some maybe, simple doodles. Maybe they already have this, some background, so they can do some little doodles mixed in with their sketchnoting. Maybe others are given the simple shapes that create a doodle. You have your circle, your square, your line, and your zigzag or something. You say, using these items, build up your sketchnoting ability. And then the others, we're going to look at just line, just arrows and direction, and bringing people through your thinking process, but it doesn't have to be all detailed as an animation, right? So you're talking about sketchnoting, and you're talking about building that skill for helping their memory and creating a more authentic listening process so they can engage at the end of lessons. Amazing for reflection. It's great to let them know how can they access that skill point, and giving them choices about how they will be doing their sketchnoting. And so thank you for that. I love sketchnoting. Here's what I would like to go into next is the idea of the questions. And do you need me for something? Sorry, I have someone popping in here with a post-it note and they're posting something down. Okay, I'll read that in a second.
This is when you are in a museum, this is what happens.
Yeah, hey, post-it note, check it out. But the idea of questions. So if we looked at the process of the lesson and looking at, we are learning to telling a story, building a skill, getting them started as the starting point to get into things. And now they're starting to create. They're starting to do the work in the lesson, whether that be the writing piece or whether that be the charcoal artwork or whatever it is. Now they're working, right? This is the process time. And the process is right here. And the first point I think is the most important. Hopefully, if there's something that you take away from this, it's number 1, he had an interesting haircut. But number 2 would be struggle versus success. And I think with student voice and choice, these are the 2 words that we need to remember and that we need to highlight throughout. And the students need to know that these are the 2 most important areas, at least when it comes to my thinking. They're working. And when you're struggling, how are you sharing that with your student? How are you sharing that? How are we acknowledging that as educators at the front, viewing students that are struggling with the content and trying to push through? And how are they struggling or finding their way to find an answer? And that they are actually sharing their thinking and sharing the steps that they're going through to get through things. So if they're actively struggling, they can they can look around and they can mention it to other people. They can say, what is the struggle point? And also linked with success. When you are succeeding, when you have that skill and you started point and you thought, oh, I can actually do this. I actually know how to handle the charcoal. This is working out well. And now you're starting to make artwork and you're starting to get going. How are you sharing that success with your classmates? And I'm coming from a student perspective. How are they sharing that out? And then as an educator, how are you noticing both of these opportunities to create student voice and allow them to share these things with their classmates? So you're noticing, okay, here's a struggle, and I see someone that's trying to figure out how the charcoal is working and how they're going to create. They don't really make the connection to their own work or to maybe the unit that we're doing, and providing some questions to them that they can think about, and then also questions that other students can think about to provide solutions, possible ways for that student to succeed. And students who feel like they're already successful, how are they sharing their voice and saying, this is what I'm trying, this is what I'm doing, I did this, and I went over here. Maybe some other students might want to take a similar approach. So they're feeding off of each other's journey. And I think that's really important. And what I would like to ask before I get to the question at the bottom is check-in points. How many times do teachers in a 45-minute lesson, let's say, I'm not sure exactly how long everyone's lessons are, but let's assume 45 minutes. And if it's not, then you can let me know in the chat. But how often are you checking in with the students to allow them to share their voice throughout the class? And this is just a random thing. Okay, now we got process going on. So, if I allocated my 45-minute class, I would probably give that first we are learning to a couple minutes, 2 or 3 minutes on the board. We're learning to, everybody know what we're doing. Then I'd give 3 or 4 minutes into my storytelling. I don't want to talk about myself too long, about the risk-taking thing, kind of get that going, and then do the skill. So maybe about 10 minutes into skills. Looking at that, we're probably about 16 minutes in. We still have, if we do my math really well, we still have about 30 minutes. So we have a 30-minute piece. How many times are you going to check in with students to find out if they're struggling or if they're succeeding, and how they can share that so that we can push their journey and hear their perspectives? So I'd love to see that check-in point.
The first feedback that I got, I wish we have more time. So it seems that Heba has a very short lesson for art. And Hiba is saying that I check on my student every 5 minutes. So which gives you like maybe if we're talking about a 40-minute session, maybe 10 times during the session. Let's check the others, what they are going to put for us. So I'm seeing, okay, so Hiba, yeah, she mentioned it's a 40-minute lesson. I always give time to my student to share their work and reflect on it for Muna. So Muna, how much time do you give? So let's try to give Vicky some number of minutes. Safa, she said it depends on the student achievement and where they are in the process. Interesting, this variety of reflections that we are getting in the chat, and then again seeing the time given to the visual art session or to any specialist, because this can be transferable to any session like music, PE, or drama. So Yamani, we take turns, and online, according to Mona, we are teaching 30 minutes. So again, this is another challenge for the online lesson, Mark. So these are some of the feedbacks I was able to pick from the chat and share them aloud with everyone.
Yeah, I think, of course, there's no right answer to this. I'm not saying, well, actually the right answer was 7, but I do feel, if the check-in point is on your radar, if you're looking for opportunities to check in for success, check in for struggle, and allow the students to share where they're going through that. So they had 3 opportunities to pick how they were going to handle the skill. They had 3 opportunities to pick how they were going to handle the materials, however that looks like in your setting, and then you let them explore, and the process starts happening, and you have check-ins. And when I do understand when in the chat they're saying, it depends on where the students are at, right? You have a lesson and the students are getting on with it and they're in the moment. You don't want to break that up with just questions for the sake of checking in. You can allow them to go on. You can allow something to be really authentic if there's flow happening in the room. I totally understand that. And also sometimes you you want to make sure that enough students are heard. So therefore you give yourself 5 minutes so that you know that people had chances to speak and share of what they're doing so that they can learn from that. So I like both of those perspectives of waiting, and then also, you know, having those 5 minutes and saying, okay, let's hear what's going on. Let's hear what's going on. A reflection at the end. And this is an interesting thing I would like to hear in the chat. And I like to use Padlet and a bunch of different other outlets to collect these moments, these struggles and successes. Because, you know, some people might write it on a Post-it note and stick it up on a board. Others might have students write it down in their sketchbooks or in their journals, or maybe on whatever device you're using. How are you keeping a collection of the student voice? That would be interesting in the chat to hear that. How are you keeping a collection of the student voice? And I know as an educator right now, I'm teaching over 360 students. And sometimes I teach grade 2 all the way to grade 5, and I teach over 500 students. So, you know, when you have that many students and that many voices and that many choices, especially you're giving them all 3 choices and 3 skills every class, how are we keeping track of this? How are we knowing their journey? And the only way to do that, I think, is to write it down somewhere, or have them write it down somewhere that's easily accessible. So I'd love to hear that in the chat. What are some ways that people are collecting these voices?
Good. So the chat started buzzing while you were talking. And then this is one of the challenges of the specialist teacher, Mark, when they teach the whole primary and then they have big number of students. So Yamini is saying, I have individual anecdotal records. People are using some digital platforms and softwares like Padlet, Jamboard, Nearpod. We are using student portfolios. We have reflection journals, PowerPoints, videos, taking notes. These are the key points coming, and then they are coming again. We have some poll. We are using Google Docs where they can also record their voice or their ideas. Voila, some of the key points that I got from the chat.
I love that.
We're adding again another very famous platform, CISO, and then student conferences. Some people, they are saying that we are learning a lot from each other in this chat. And then finally, again, more platform or softwares, especially now that many of us are using them during the online teaching and learning.
Definitely. I think that's definitely one space that teachers have really upskilled. And I don't need to say that, you know, everybody knows that for sure. Places like Jamboards are amazing spaces for students to write down their reflections. I agree, Seesaw. And so I thank you so much for sharing those, and a lot of great places. And I just want to keep that on the radar for this chat, is that idea of having time for questioning, being really present as an educator to know that it's important. And we've heard a couple strategies, 5 minutes or tapping in when the students are ready, and just being, having that on the radar is the first point, but then also is looking for the struggle and the success. I know sometimes it's, we can fall towards one or the other. You know, sometimes we can see those students who are constantly struggling and kind of question them and provide different strategies for them to succeed. And the ones who are really succeeding, oftentimes they can just kind of roll on, and we know that they can roll on, and we see them and they're doing their work. And it's the benefit of both those parties sharing with each other and both those parties sharing their strategies that can be really, really powerful, and collecting that so that students can read and check out those things afterwards or in their own timing, you know, and kind of reflect on that Jamboard or wherever you keep that later. Just like in the chat group here, someone writes something and maybe someone doesn't respond to it and type something next to it, but they saw it and that it becomes something meaningful. And maybe this whole chat of me here today is actually your point in the chat group that really inspired someone or gave someone some ideas. So, you know, you never know where that stuff is going to come from and where your voice or the student's voice is going to impact. So collecting those things is very, very important. Now, the conceptual lens. And, you know, this is something I was speaking to when I was talking about skills, and the idea that sometimes as an art teacher, a music teacher, a PE teacher, specialist teacher, we tend to jump on skills and roll with those things because they become so easy for us, or more or easier, I should probably say, because not easy to assess. But the conceptual lens, if I'd speak about the art room, and I wrote that here, the art room should be used as a window for transdisciplinary learning, because I think it's just quite a nice opportunity for students to be able to access what's going on in their units of inquiry, if I'm talking from an IB perspective. Because, bringing to life anything from the homeroom, I think, can be done in the art room with quite some success. I haven't found many units that I haven't been able to integrate at maybe, it could be a level 1, very small thing, just maybe one of the related concepts, or maybe just the learner profile. However, most of the time I can look at the central idea in one of the lines of inquiry and kind of pull that into the art space and link that with a skill, and then link that with the story, and then link that with the struggle and success, and build that up together. So I'm going to just talk about a unit that I'm doing right now, which is the body system. This is in grade 2. The students look at the body systems. And in the art room, we can look at portraits, we can look at body movement, we can look at drawing forms and how those relate to the human body. And, the human body, when it comes to the history of art, is just all over the place. I could walk around the Louvre Abu Dhabi Museum right now, and I'd probably have endless examples. Probably wouldn't get out of the first section, to be fair enough. But then looking at what are the things that I'm going to touch upon that I want the students to succeed with? What are the lifelong skills that I want them to take? Not just about learning how to draw the mannequin again, and learning how to draw the human body, or learning how to draw forms, but the idea of teamwork, the idea that we're going to be looking at partnerships, that we're going to be looking at observation skills. And those would be the stories that I would build in. Those would be the moments that I would tell a story about teamwork and about partnership and about observations. And actually all 3 of these stories would be this chat right now. I would tell students about meeting up with Ali and, working as a team to bring this opportunity together where we could share with educators from around the world, having a partnership where people in the chat are sharing their unique perspectives and their ideas in real time about what's going on. And then just observations, people seeing stuff in this presentation that I'm giving you, or Ali's ability to observe different things from his perspective and look in the chat and make connections. So a story about educators coming together might not seem like it links with body systems exactly, but it might provide the moment where they are able to bring something to their work on body systems because of those other elements that I was talking about in this story, our journey here today. So Ali, if you could check in the chat, a question I would like to ask is, what unit are you working on right now where a story would come to life to really support it? So you're working on a unit with writing, you're working on a unit with still life drawing. Who knows what you're doing? I'd love to know what you're doing right now, or planning. What unit are you planning? And what story or what kind of thing would you talk about? And you could just say, a story about teamwork, because I'm doing this this unit about the ecosystem or something, and think, okay, this is like an interesting way to make a connection with the students and allow them to maybe have an opportunity to share their voice and their perspective.
We need to give them time because we're asking for a conceptual question, right, Mike? So I got a first comment from Yamani, and she's saying we're doing a unit on exploration. So we would like to know, Yamani, what are the stories that you shared to provoke the thinking of your student? Nelly mentioned previously that observation is a key. Mona is referring to the unit about homes and the different type of houses. And here again, it would be interesting to know the stories and the provocation of the unit. Amanda is talking about a unit on conflict, and we use the story of boy overboard. And so the story is the starting point. So I read picture book, if I'm not mistaken, to start the unit and to provoke the thinking. So these are the different units. I'm getting plenty of ideas. Plants, and they are working on plant sustainability, looking at sharing the planet. Muna is using a picture of a beehive as a provocation for her unit on houses and homes. Interesting, checking on Facebook if people are typing something or they are just quiet. So these are some of the stories. One more, the unit on energy, and then the provocation. They are pictures of the global warming.
I think that's amazing. Great responses there. Thank you for sharing, Ali. And I would push everyone one step further and take that provocation and that idea of, the storybook, and take that idea of the beehive and think, how can I make that even more personal to my journey as an educator, to my journey as a human being? And the idea that when students come in, they start to link to the idea of waiting to hear
Are you a
where,
student coming in now?
waiting to hear where the lesson is going to begin, and not a big provocation where they're thinking, okay, I can't wait to see this video and what's this hook and what are we trying to do? And we all try to plan our provocations to really get our students the questions out and really engage them in. But sometimes it could be a simple story about just an experience that you had with insects, or with something that then relates into the beehive. And maybe you have your provocation, but how can you connect that more authentically to who you are? And my experience is that once you do that, they stop looking for those big moments, but they start wanting to hear those smaller moments that you're sharing as an educator about you. They start wanting to know more about you. I'm going to just click here back to the beginning to summarize with everyone. Going through the planning of my lesson, and maybe it can seem more clear now than maybe at the beginning, of how the storytelling and your personal journey can bring you through your lesson. So you have your lesson of what you want to be doing, looking at whether it's homes, and you're talking about settlement, or you're talking about who we are or where we are in place and time. Depends on what your unit is. And then looking at the story that you're going to kind of connect to something from your planning that you're trying to pull. And I would only try to take a story and pull one thing off. In a unit, I'm trying to cover about 12 things. I'm trying to cover a learner profile, a couple creating strands from the scope and sequence, a couple responding strands. I'm trying to capture an ATL. And so I look at that kind of plan of what we need to assess, and I think, how can I link stories to these things? And then, okay, this lesson I'm going to talk about human body, and I'm going to talk about observations. And so I'm going to think of a story about that and how that links with me. Then give them the skill, give them 3 ways to access the skill so they can actually learn how to do something. Give them 3 ways to check out materials that they'd like to use, so that something isn't so limited to one thing. And then, we get into differentiation, asking those questions, seeing the students who are struggling, seeing the students that are succeeding, and being able to change things based on their sharing and their voice, right? And as educators, that's our job, to know our students and know how we can guide them along. And so you differentiate your lesson based on that struggle and success moment. And then the reflection piece, asking those questions and keeping track of where can we put them, whether that's on a Jamboard or on Seesaw or on a Padlet. Where can we keep this so that students can reflect on it, and we as educators can reflect on the student voice, so it doesn't get lost in the fact that we're teaching so many students, or we're teaching them online, or we're teaching them in the class now, or things are flipping back and forth all the time. So I hope that is a little bit clear, my thinking of the ability of an educator to share our own perspectives, our own voice, as a way to introduce our students into some of the things that we'll be teaching in our lessons, and allow them to think, that was interesting how Mr. Mark was talking about being a risk taker. I wonder how that connects to here. Or, you know what, I want to share that in my artwork, and I feel more confident in sharing something with Mr. Mark because he shared something with me. And allowing students to see, when you're vulnerable, when you didn't succeed, when you succeeded, all types of stories to make you human, from when you were a child in their shoes, until when you were a university student figuring out what you were supposed to do, or a college student, to where you are in your career now, when you where we still are figuring things out every day, just right now, even as we speak in the chat. So that's what I have today. Ali,
Yes,
question
Mark,
and
I
answer.
think you, according to Yamani, you're bringing a lot of inspiration to the session and to the way of, again, empowering the student, listening to them, giving them choice, voice, and ownership, as we mentioned, or as we are repeating in the morning. I really liked your perspective and the title of the session, It Starts With You. And this also reflects the session on teacher agency. And so, I think people were engaged in listening to you. They were sharing their experiences, commenting on your ideas. And I would like to invite them, Mark, to the following session. So here I'm going to share my screen, if you don't mind. And then let me start with our YouTube channel. You can find all the recording of the day and all our previous webinars, more than 100 sessions done in 1 year in French, Arabic, and English on our YouTube channel. So feel free to join. We posted the sessions of the morning, teacher agency, reimagining personalized learning to empower agency, developing relationship in your class to increase agency, agency in Arabic, and then the 3 other sessions, they will be posted very, very soon. The last session of the day in approximately half an hour from now will be with Lou, and Lou will be joining us from the USA, and she will be talking at becoming a agentic educator. And so you have the description of the session here, and then I shared with you the link for the Zoom. If you haven't registered, feel free to invite also your friends, especially if you are in a country where it's locked down and you are not able to go out. If you would like to finish this academic year with a nice professional development, we had a chance to have Julie at the beginning of this year, 2021, and she talked about learning that transfer, concept-based curriculum, and so she will be running a workshop, a full day workshop on learning that transfers in 2 weeks from now. So you are invited also to register, go explore the agenda of the workshop, and join us if you can make it. In the chat, I can see a lot of thank you. I can see it was a beautiful experience. And then hopefully the people who are still watching, they have 1 more hour to join us in the last session. Mark, it's always a pleasure to work and collaborate with you. We met a few years ago in an official IB workshop, and the IB word, as we always say, it's a small word. We always connect, we always network. And final word from you.
All right, final word. Thank you very much. Well, I have to start with what I have to end with what I started with is my hats off to anyone who joined us today in the weekend. Truly, I know as an educator, we are busy, but you're taking the opportunity to hear my perspective on things and how Ali was interpreting from the chat and sharing with everyone so the voices could be heard. I think it's so amazing that you joined us today to, just hear another educator and try to learn together. I truly appreciate it. I know that we're all busy. So keep up the good work. You can find me at Run Educator on Twitter. If you ever have any questions and you want to collaborate or share or anything like that, I'd be happy to share more of my ideas about sharing your journey as an educator to empower your students to share theirs. So thank you so much, Ali. Thank you everybody in the chat. It's been a pleasure. I need to run upstairs now to see what the students are doing. Hopefully they're not causing too much of a problem, but it's been a pleasure.
Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.